dependency judge for Osceola County, so I'm kind of at the pointy end of the spear for all things about our children's community once it finds its way into the court system. We're going to have a presentation today, but I'd like to first tell you a little bit about where we've been and where we're going as far as children who are aged out of foster care. The state of Florida has been providing services to children who have aged out or hit 18 for years, and for the last 10 years, the state of Florida would provide this bundle of services known as the Road to Independence program. And while they provided kind of a safety net for many of those youth, they really didn't produce the outcomes that the state and we all felt was acceptable for our youth. And those highlights really are high school graduation, a stable living environment, healthy, long relationships with supportive adults, and obviously the skills to get a good paying job. So the legislature last spring passed a new Nancy C. Dennert Common Sense and Compassion Independent Living Act, or what we just refer to simply as independent living. And the law allows children to have kind of a more natural transition from foster care to independence. And community-based care and a lot of its partner agencies, and a lot of you folks here in the room, are really taking a good look at this new law to help us develop a system of care for older foster youth, which targets better outcomes on those 5 important things that we need to give them kind of a push for success into their adult life. I'd like to introduce now Gene Tirico. He is the chair of our Osceola County Community Alliance for Children and Families. The Community Alliance is a group that meets quarterly, or more often than quarterly sometimes, to address basically a broad spectrum of the children's needs. We get a lot of agencies together and have a real meaningful discussion. And Gene is going to introduce our speaker today. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Well, I'm pleased to be here, and I thank you for attending. This forum came about after some discussion with several people in the Alliance, as well as the Children's Cabinet and CBC, and there was a call or a need to kind of bring about some educational resources for the community. And so that's how this forum came about. We're certainly pleased that we have some folks. And, Shannon over there is going to be handing out a microphone. I think that we're going to leave the Q&A discussion up to the speaker on how he wishes to handle it before, during, after. We are recording this, by the way, so we can use it for educational purposes later. So that's why we have the mic. And so we'd like to have your question, and please do have some. If not, we can plant some for you, okay? Now, we'll do that. But your questions, we'd like to actually capture them so that we can kind of move that into the educational piece that we record. So what I would like to do at this time, first of all, by the way, thanks for your seating arrangements. It looks like, you know, in church you'd all be in the back, and it would be, but now you've all come pretty good. So whoever arranged this, I thank them. Jerry Glenn has represented children and families as an attorney for over 20 years. He's now the Chief Legal Officer for Community-Based Care of Central Florida, a nonprofit group that manages foster care system in Central Florida. He has been involved in many nonprofits throughout his career and served on many, many boards. He's led major reform in several law school skills programs, and he is a nationally renowned lecturer on children's law topics. Mr. Glenn was an associate professor and director of clinical programs at Barry University School of Law. Before that, clinical programs at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and clinical instructor at the Florida State University School of Law. And I'm going to have to cut this short, or we're going to use his entire hour. But that's the kind of person you're going to get to speak to you in a few minutes. I am going to go and just mention that he's written a lot of articles, written books, and one of the most important things, he loves working with children and young adults as a lawyer. And like his 3 children at home, his clients teach him something new every day. So with that, Jerry, please.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Oh, well. You can probably hear me anyway, but let me play with it for a second. Oh, I was on before and I turned it off. Sorry. Okay. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the new independent living law that the judge mentioned. And he took away one of the topics, which is why we want to change the law, so we'll go through that quickly. But I also want to talk about, several of you in the room are familiar with our old system of care, and so I want to talk about how it differs and how it changes between our old system of care and the new system of care. Then I want to talk about what we're doing here locally, what we hope to do here locally, what we've been building over the last 6 months. It's a very exciting effort we've been having, at, starting from scratch. We took this as an opportunity, as the judge alluded to, we took this as an opportunity for us to completely look at our system and say, how can we do it better? The legislature gave us an opportunity to start from scratch, and that's what we took advantage of that. And then I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about where some of the gaps are and where we might need some help from the community in building. As was suggested, I taught law school for a very long time, and so I'm used to dealing with an unruly crowd. So feel free to ask questions throughout. One of the things I might do as you ask questions is I might say, I'll get back to that. I would encourage you to keep me honest and write yourself a note. And if at the end I haven't covered it, be sure and we'll ask some more at the end. Okay? But many times folks raise questions and are trying to jump ahead in the chapter. I will hopefully get back to all the questions. But if not, keep me honest. Right? As Judge Karsten alluded to, we weren't getting the outcomes we wanted. A lot of what we have now is a lack of high school graduation. And so you'll see the system has been designed to really encourage high school graduation. I would love for our youth to exceed the state, county averages for high school graduation. But I'd be even much more pleased for us to just meet it, And we are way below that as far as our criteria for high school graduation. But one of the other really things is we want to have them have normal transitions. And what you'll see is 18 no longer means anything. Many of us, when we were growing up, 18, as I like to say, was a nice dinner. Next morning you woke up and everything was the same. We want to have a normal transition to adulthood, where 18 is a big deal. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm taking my 16-year-old to go get a driver's license. We want him to have normal transitions. Okay, that will be more of a joy for me because he'll be able to drive himself to school than for him, although he'll probably enjoy it a lot too. But we want to have normal transitions, and that's what we're trying to build. And that includes post turning 18. Having healthy adults support you throughout life is one of the things that we hope to build. And then obviously we want to reduce some of the negative behavior. We want to reduce delinquency, criminality, dependency on the public benefits, which part of that is the life skills. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those life skills, what we often call independent living skills. I've always hated that term independent living, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about independent living. No one in this room lives independently. We live interdependently. We all have a network of support. My mother wishes she would have gotten rid of me at some point, but she's still stuck with me, call her for guidance and support. We all live interdependently with coworkers, colleagues, friends, family members. But we want to improve their ability to succeed in life, and there are certain skills that we'll talk about as we do this. This is a nice little summary of what the options are. The department put this out early after the passing of law. And when a child now turns 18, there are 3 basic options. If you don't have a high school diploma, you only have 2 options. You only have extended foster care or I'm out of here. Okay? They are adults, although technically the law makes them still children until 21, and some of us are old enough to know that that actually used to be the law. You became an adult at 21, not at 18. But when they turn 18, they still can make some decisions, and so when they turn 18, they have 2 options. The option of staying where they are, which we call extended foster care, just staying where they are, or they can say, I'm out of here. Okay? And they can leave, they can opt out. Right? We're going to talk a little bit, but if you stay where you are, you've got a whole bunch of different choices. As you go down, we sort of talked that this is where most of our kids are going to be. They're still in high school. You know, many of our kids are behind academically for lots of different reasons. Instability in their own home, instability we've created in the foster care system. But they don't have their high school diploma. So their only option is, you know, either leave or stay in extended foster care. However, like a lot of folks in normal families, they may stay at home even after they get their high school diploma. That's what this little line here is about, which is you can still be attending post-secondary. We want them to stay where they're at. If they're in a good foster home, just stay where you're at. Okay? Stay where you're at until you get your high school diploma, and then if you want to go to Valencia, you know, or UCF and want to stay at their foster home, fine. That's all extended foster care. Everything just stays the same, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But they can leave, and we're going to talk, if they do leave, all they get is aftercare. These used to be systems where you could choose multiple systems. Now you have to make a choice. You either stay where you're at or leave. And if you have a high school diploma, then you have a third option. But only if you have a high school diploma, you have a third option, which we now call post-secondary education services and support. If you're in college, you can stay where you're at, or you can enroll in the post-secondary education services and support program. Okay? If you're not in college, your only option is extended foster care or I'm out of here. Okay? One of the things is also the sort of vision here, which is there's a great sort of draft in this law that if you're in college, if you're going to Tallahassee Community College or FAMU or Florida State up in Tallahassee, or you're going to University of South Florida in Tampa, having a network of support here doesn't help you as much. You know? So there's a vision that what we're going to do is we're going to build on the college campuses college coaches who will be a secondary network of support. Okay? We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through, but that's sort of the vision, is that they will get their support from the colleges rather. They will hopefully still have some support from us, but they will have their main support from the colleges if they're in college. That's where most kids get their support, is from the community there. But our kids may need a little bit extra support. One of my real dreams is not just that we get high school diplomas, but we get kids graduating from college. The statistic on our kids graduating from college is pathetic. We have a really low bar to meet. 3% nationally of foster kids graduate from college, okay, with either a 2-year or a 4-year degree. Okay? So we have a really low bar. I'm really excited because I think we've got some programs that are going to make much greater success than that, and we're going to be working on it. Okay? If they stay in foster care, whether staying in foster care and going to college or staying in foster care, still getting their high school diploma, and there's some other options for staying in foster care, everything will remain the same. Not only will they live the same place, but they'll have the same case manager. They'll still go and meet with Judge Karsten, you know, every 6 months. Everything stays the same. It's foster care. Foster care now runs from 0 to 21. That's what people need to think about. Foster care is no longer a 0 to 18 program. It is now 0 to 21. And that's the way we need to think about it. Foster care now runs 0 to 21. I like to also point out to people that the legislature gave us 0 money for this extra 3 years of care. But that's a different issue for us to address. Okay. All right, so let me go back and let's talk about what we used to do and what we're going to do now. Okay? What we used to do before this year, before January of this year, is that when a child turned 13, we enhanced a series of services for them. We began assessments and plans at 13. We started assessing the youth and doing plans at 13. They had to choose a career goal. They had to say, you know, am I going to a 4-year college? Am I going to a 2-year college? Am I going to the military? Or am I going to work when I'm 18? Okay? I don't know many of you all, but when I've interacted with a 13 or 14-year-old, that plan might change a little bit, you know. My 16-year-old did really well in the PSAT, and he's getting all these college, you know, requests and stuff like that, and that's very exciting. Every day he tells me a different college he wants to go to, and I tell him how cold it is, and he says, oh, maybe not, you know. But so, you know, youth change their plans all the time. We had normalcy plans every 90 days, which is that we went into the foster home and sat down with the foster parent and sat down with the child, and we said, this is what the foster parent will provide to you, and this is what you will provide to the youth. And these are the extracurricular they can participate in. And we had these big meetings annually to talk about how's the youth progressing independently. All this was extra stuff we brought into the foster home, okay? And extra people who came into the foster home to supervise the 13 to 17-year-olds. Now, what do we do with the 13 to 17-year-olds? That's it. The foster parents just work with the youth, okay? Now, some of us who want to make sure these youth get their skills, or that makes a little bit nervous. You know, foster parents are going to have to report out how they're making progress and stuff. But let's talk a little bit about what skills we're talking about. What are we talking about when we talk about independent living skills or life skills? What are we talking about? Money. Laundry, money. What else? Cooking. Bank accounts. Hygiene, very important. Anything else? Medication management, or how you go to the doctor, you know. Okay. Critical thinking, a little bit higher level, and we'll come back to that for a second. Anything else? Driving. Employment, okay. Thank you. One of the things that, especially with the, I want to focus a little bit on some of those. Let's talk about sort of the cooking, laundry. How do we all learn that? Home, parents, maybe just doing it. You know? So my now 16-year-old, you know, last year, you know, he's a typical 15-year-old. He only wanted to wear 2 outfits to school every week because they were the cool outfits. And I was like, that's great. You're going to learn how to do laundry. Because I only do laundry once a week. Okay? So if you want to change your clothes, you want to keep the same clothes, then you're going to have to learn to do laundry. So he learned to do laundry. Okay, that's how it happens. You know, my 9-year-old, now 11-year-old, you know, but when she was 9, she decided she wanted to start cooking. Great, that's how it happens, and that's what this sort of. It's called the common sense bill, you know, because the idea is let's design a system that's common sense. Now, many of our youth live in group homes, so we need to make sure that the group homes give these opportunities for youth. You know, one of the things is money management or grocery shopping. You know, go to the grocery store, buy stuff. It's a lot of simple things. I heard a story yesterday about one of our youth who's in an apartment and her utility bill is really high. Her mentor went to that apartment to sort of talk to her about budgeting, you know, and how she handles her budget and stuff like that, and it was freezing. The apartment was, the young woman, the 19-year-old said, yeah, it's really cold in here. And the mentor said, what about the thermostat? And she says, what is that? It's simple things. You know, I teach a lot of my former clients how to drive because we'll talk, they can't get driver's license. There's barriers to driver's license. There's a bill pending that will hopefully eliminate some of those barriers for them getting driver's license. But they have difficulty getting driver's license. So their 18th birthday present, standing 18th birthday present from me is that I will help them get their driver's license. But when I take them out driving, I regularly have them pump the gas, and they often say, I don't know how. I said, exactly. You know, that's what we should be having the foster parents do. Every opportunity. And the reason it shouldn't start at 13 is it should start whenever, you know. It should start whenever it makes sense, you know. My now 16-year-old, I like to tell the story. I don't want to bore folks about, you know, people who've heard the story, but it's one of my favorite stories about him, which is that we're sitting there watching TV one day, and he says, I'm thirsty. And this is when he was 3. Okay? I'm thirsty. And I said, you want me to go get you a juice? No, no. He was in do-self phase. Do self. Okay? So I say, okay. And so now I know what to expect. I expect to find in the middle of the kitchen floor a huge puddle of juice, okay, because he tried to pour it himself. But that's how you learn, okay? You make mistakes, and that's one of the problems. And one of the other bills that was passed last year, or part of this bill as well, which is to give some immunity for prudent parenting. If they do injure themselves, they are given some immunity because we want to encourage them to just allow children to do things. So my son goes off to make juice, and he comes back a little while later, and he's got some cheese. Okay? It took him a little while, and I figured that was because he was probably cleaning up the mess. They're trying to clean up the mess he made. And he comes back with some cheese, and that's not a problem. Oftentimes I buy those big blocks of cheese, and I cut them up and put them in the refrigerator in a bag. So he comes back with cheese, and we're sitting there and we're watching TV. He's actually probably watching TV. I'm probably on the computer doing something. But, he's, watching TV, and then he says, I'm thirsty. And I said, you want me to go get you juice? No, no, do self. Okay. And he goes off. Okay. So now he's taking a little bit longer, and I'm a little nervous, like he's broken something maybe or something. So I go in there, and as I walk into the kitchen, he has the largest knife out of our out of our knife set, and he's going, ho whack, into a big block of cheese, And it's one of those moments where you want to scream, but you're worried about him losing a digit, So I calmly said, Jacob, please give me that knife, But again, we have to give them the leeway to do self, okay? From 3 to 21. Foster care now runs from 0 to 21. Life skills continue even past 21. But we need to give them the opportunity to try things. And again, in the group home or not. And that's what this new law says. It should be done by the foster parents in normal course of business. And what we've tried to do within CBC's system is they're all going to have forms that, whatever happened today, just write a note. They went grocery shopping. That's a life skill. We went to the bank and I showed them how to use an ATM machine. That's a life skill. We talked about how when we were at Target, I pointed out the employment kiosk at Target. That's a life skill. Just all those sort of things, and we want to have just it's a duplicate form that the foster parent's going to have eventually. I hope to have it on the web where they can just log on, and the guardians ad litem and the case managers and everybody can sort of get a printout of what has happened just as it naturally flows. We're trying to build a system that supports natural flows rather than people coming into the house and saying, okay, we're going to, one of the things I used to always love is they would teach them about bank accounts. Our foster youth get $12 a month in allowance. Means nothing. Oh yeah, they went through the financial literacy course, which means someone sat down and talked to them about this theoretical thing called a bank account. Okay. We found out how much they knew about bank accounts when they were 18, and they opened a bank account and immediately overdrawn and now owe the bank $200 because they overdrew their amount, and they got fines and then fines on top of fines and all that sort of stuff. And they will never be able to open a bank account again. So we need to fix our system and again just sort of have normalcy. And part of normalcy is having the foster parents do it. And as part of that, the caregivers, foster parents, group home providers, whoever's providing care need to be part of that team as we sit there and talk about that. As we talk about this youth and how we're getting them ready for independence, they now are supposed to participate in the case plans, the team meetings, and the court hearings. This is actually across the board, not just with our older foster youth. That's one of the changes in the system. But the big thing is the caregivers are supposed to give statement to progress to the court. Again, starting at 13, what are they learning? What have you been teaching them later? And we're trying to give them the tools with those forms to be able to provide that feedback to all of us, okay? And again, we just want it to be natural flows, There will be categories for them to touch on, and talking to a 13-year-old about jobs isn't going to be very meaningful. Talking to a 16-year-old about jobs will be meaningful. Before this year, we had IL meetings every 6 months for the older youth, for the 15th and 17-year-olds, and we had special judicial reviews within 90 days of the 17th birthday, and specific court reports on services of the child. Much of that will continue under the new law. There does have to be specific court reports. We are, although not required, we're not required to have meetings. We are going to have meetings. They're going to be called youth transition meetings. They're going to start right now at 17-year-olds. It's not statutorily required, but we're going to have it. But we're going to have them as frequently as the youth wants. And we're going to have them sort of built in to be more frequent at a natural flow. We don't want 18 to be a big deal. We don't want a whole bunch of meetings talking about their 18th birthday because our assumption should be everything stays the same. So we don't want to make 18 a big deal. So we're going to have these meetings, and as they get closer to high school graduation, we're going to have bigger meetings. There's a school in Orange County, Workforce Advantage Academy, where all the administrators talk to all the kids and they talk about this thing. What are you going to do the Monday after? That's the question. What are you going to do the Monday after? And everybody at the school knows what they're asking. They're asking, what are you going to do the Monday after you graduate? That should be the question. So as we get closer to high school graduation, we'll have more meetings. But 18 shouldn't be a big deal. We want to be prepared if they were to leave at 18, so we're going to have these meetings at 17. Or if they're saying, I'm out of here at 18, then we'll have more frequent meetings. But the meetings will be, if a youth is like, everything's staying the same, why are we having all these meetings? We don't have to, okay? If everything's staying the same, fine, we'll meet every 3 months. You know, that would sort of be the default. We'll meet every 3 months. But if the youth wants to meet, they're also going to be very youth-driven. So the youth will be actually setting the agenda about what I need to work on. You know, what are my goals? And then we'll facilitate some conversation about how do you accomplish those goals. But youth-driven meetings, which will lead to some interesting reports I'm talking about. But there will be still mandatory court hearings during the 17th year. The judge will have to address the child's plan to remain in foster care, ensuring that that they're meeting the criteria for extended foster care, and we'll come back to what that means, and that there's a transition plan, which we'll come back to as well. The child also receives something new in the law. They receive their complete educational, medical, and mental health records. They get it. Now, I've been appointed to lots of older foster youth, and many times I was appointed to older foster youth who had serious mental health issues, and I'm into killing trees. I collect lots of records, you know. And so their records sometimes would fill a whole file drawer, but they get it. They get those records. Okay? Now, a lot of people sort of get nervous because they're 17, and if you've ever read, one of the records is referred to as the Comprehensive Behavioral Health Assessment. They say bad things about them. They say bad things about the kids. Good. Better that we talk through those issues when they're 17 and they have a support system than at 18 when they're out of here. Okay? They've chosen to get out of here. It talks about their psychotropic medications and all that sort of stuff. Well, let's talk about that. You know, why is it that you're on these? What do you want to do when you turn 18? You know, if you're planning on leaving it, if you're planning on getting off of them at 18, let's start taping you off at 17 and a half, because it's dangerous to sometimes go off some of these medications, you know, earlier. But they get their records. They also, this is one of the things that hopefully someone's working on down here, that you get access to the court case file. So the clerks should be ready for 17-year-olds walking up and saying, I'm the child in this dependency case and want to see my file. Well, they're all electronic and they don't like giving them, you know. So that's one of the issues we need to work through, you know. But they're supposed to have access to those files. I don't know any clerk's office that's figured that out yet. So, Judge, I'll turn that to you. Sorry. Some of the things in the specific court report are things that have always had to be there. They should get their Medicaid card and information on Medicaid. One of the things that's independent of our change in the law, it's really by the Affordable Care Act. Under the Affordable Care Act, many of us who have our children on private insurance are allowed to keep our children until 26. Now all of our former foster youth get to be on Medicaid till they're 26. Used to be able to have Medicaid till 21. Now they get to have it till 26. Those who you all may know who have left our system already, they can come back and apply for Medicaid. If you go to Florida Access and there's a new category, which is I'm applying as an individual who was in foster care when I was 18. Okay? And if you have any problems, please let me know, because we have sort of an inside way of sort of going behind the system and saying, why is this kid being rejected? Okay? Any former foster kid who turned 18 in foster care can qualify for Medicaid till they're 26. Yes? Okay, so the question was, does that apply to them getting their medical records? Interesting question. That law is not retroactive, but if a child wanted to get their medical records and CBC had them, we would be interested in providing them for them. So, they get a certified copy of their birth certificate. They're supposed to have them. And one of the things is, and they also get a copy of their Social Security card. One of the things that people get upset about is, but if we give a 17-year-old a copy of their birth certificate or their Social Security card, what are they going to do? Lose it! Remember what we're supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be teaching them life skills. So they need to go get it. They lost it. They need to go get it. It's like also, you know, the reason we're giving them their Medicaid card is they should start making their doctor's appointments. Well, that's really difficult because you've got to coordinate case manager and foster parents and all these people. We're teaching them life skills. Let them make their doctor's appointments. Okay? Let them have their Social Security card. Let them have their birth certificate. And if they lose it, then you are able to teach them how to replace it. Okay? That's a great opportunity because they will need to learn because they'll lose it after they're 18. I've lost my Social Security card recently, so luckily I have a passport so I can still be employed. Yes?
One of the things they should be doing is learning their Social Security number. That's
Right, and one of the things she said is that they should be learning is knowing what their Social Security number is as well, but also knowing how to keep it secure. So I just had this conversation again with my 16-year-old about where do you keep this information on my phone? That's really bad, okay? Is it under me, you know? And so he explained, no, I've got one of those coded, security things, apps that, I don't know about. And he's got some funky passcode that I've tried to figure out and can't figure out when I'm checking what his text messages say. But anyway, they also get information on the over 18-year-old services. They're supposed to have an open bank account. They're supposed to have a bank account. Okay? So we need to make sure that they get bank accounts. Again, part of that is teaching them how to manage a bank account. Part of that is do they have any money to put in the bank account, which is part of the difficulty and stuff. Information on public assistance, and an understanding of where they're going to be living when they're 18. Understand of where they'll be in school when they're 18. So those are all things that were under the old law, but are strengthened and the specific report needs to have. But additionally, they're supposed to have information on extended foster care that we're going to talk about. And one of the things is it's sort of a weird language in the law, which is they're supposed to have compliance with financial aid requirements. It doesn't make any sense for a sophomore in high school. What the issue is in order to qualify for any of the over 18-year-old, for the post-secondary education services and support program, they have to have applied for a FAFSA. They don't have to get any financial aid, but they have to have applied for financial aid through FAFSA. And so we've had a couple kids who didn't know that and stuff, and so we need to be teaching them. Okay? But the big sort of new document for these older foster youth is a transition plan, which has to be done at 17. We're going to maybe move it back a little bit as we make progress here. Right now, we're still doing it just at 17, and we're doing it through these youth transition meetings. But it's a plan developed in collaboration with the youth, caregiver, and anyone else the youth wants. And again, it's very youth-empowered. It's sort of and that's why we want to design it as a youth-empowered sort of document. So some of them, there are some, we're going to go through the list of things that have to be in there, but some of them are going to be more specific than others. It has to cover housing. Well, what's my plan? I'm staying at foster home. Okay, that's your housing plan. Good, we got it covered. Okay. When you go to college, where are you going to live? The dorm. Great. Okay. And one of the things I'm really excited, I hope that we get some of our kids living in dorms. That would be really exciting to me too, which means we, the CBC, have to put a deposit down in October or September of the year before, which is fine. I'm very excited about that. I want one of our kids to have a plan that they're going to UF, UCF, USF, wherever, and we have to get a dorm. I want to work through that problem. Okay? I want one of our kids, that to be their plan. Healthcare. For some kids, healthcare is going to be, I go to the doctor every 6 months, but other kids, it's going to be, like one of my kids, who age out, who has severe diabetes, who's going to be your endocrinologist? You've always had people around you. Shouldn't you have a dietitian? Where are you going to get your insulin? How are you going to pay for your insulin? It should be very specific. So some plans vague, some plans real specific. Education. Where are you in education? Where are you going to be in education? We used to have these education plans, and I used to like to have the education meetings when we talked about the education youth at the school, because I wanted to know from the people who knew, the school counselors, well, he's got, 5 credits towards graduation, so how far are we away? Okay. Is it realistic he's going to do it in a year or 2 years? Will the school let them stay after they're 18? They actually don't have to let them stay after they're 19 unless there's, a likelihood of graduation. So there's an out for the school. Some schools will let them. St. Cloud was great with one of my clients, letting him stay in the hopes of getting a regular high school diploma. The plan has to talk about workforce support and employment services, and we'll talk some more about that, and mentorship. The original draft of this bill was very short. The bill became very large. But the original draft was very short, and it just talked about mentorship because Someone had the conclusion that all these youth needed was mentorship. I'm a huge fan of mentorships, and we'll talk about, lifelong committed adults. One of the things I love about California's system is no kid's allowed to leave foster care until they can identify an adult who they can call on to help them as they progress through life. Who is it that? And one of the things in the transition, who are your natural mentors? Who are people you call upon? Right? And we're going to talk some more about that. Over 18, under the old law, foster care ended at 18, so now it goes to 21. And we had 3 programs post 18. Road to Independence. Can anybody tell me what we gave youth in the Road to Independence program? Money, okay? We gave money if they stayed in school. Any school, high school, tech school, GED school, whatever school, we gave you money. Okay? And then the Transitional Support Plan. Can you tell me what we did for them then? You've been to my presentation before. It was about money. We gave them a check, okay? We gave them a check if they signed up for a 90-day plan to accomplish a goal. And you would see these 90-day plans, and they would look great, but then 90 days later, you'd see a plan that looked just like the last 90-day plan. And many of our youth weren't making progress. And so we had transitional support, and we gave them money. And then we had aftercare, and what did we do? Gave them money. Okay. So the old system was all about writing checks. I'm excited to tell you, we, at least locally, are not going to be writing checks, okay? With the exception of the post-secondary education program, which we'll talk about. Under the new law, extended foster care till 21, I keep saying 21, 0 to 21. There's actually an additional clause, which is that you can stay until you're 22 if it's a child with a disability, which sort of matches up again with that sort of vision of high school graduation, because kids with disabilities can stay in high school till they're 22. But extended foster care until 21 or 22 if it's a child with disability. One of the exciting things is they may be readmitted into care until they're 21, which is a very, I've been very, for years I've been saying they're going to leave at 18. They're 18, and first of all, where are they going to go when they leave at 18? Anybody want to tell me? Pardon? Boy's friend's house? Where else? Parents. Okay, those are the 2 most common, boyfriend, girlfriend, or parents is where they're going to go. Okay? They're going to leave us because somebody loves them, that being the boyfriend, and we've been lying about their parents. Okay? And so that's where they're going to go. Okay? They may end up what I refer to as couch surfing, going from house to house, a lot and stuff. At some point, they may realize, that foster home wasn't so bad. That group home wasn't so bad, right? And Judah knows many of these kids who've decided that maybe it's not so bad. And so they can come back. And there's no limit on how many times they can come back. They can leave and come back and leave and come back. Okay? But if they're going to come back, they had to have been living in licensed care on their 18th birthday. That's it. So some of us with the legal technicalities and stuff like that don't have to be adjudicated. They just have to be living in licensed care on their 18th birthday. Okay? And one of the following. Completing a high school diploma, which is what I've been talking the most about because I think that's what most of our kids would be doing, either as a regular high school diploma or some sort of post-secondary. Remember that little line to the blue, bubble there, that they can be staying in foster care and going to college, just like my mother couldn't get me out of the house till I was 22. I lived down the street from my college in her apartment, okay, in my parents' apartment, until I was 22. Or participating in a program or activity designed for employment or eliminate barriers for employment. What is that? Pardon? Workforce might have a program. Anything else? Job Corps would qualify. Now that's sort of interesting because that provides housing as well, but still we could qualify them for extended foster care at Job Corps. There are many, at TICO down here, there are certificate programs that aren't high school diploma programs that, but being a carpenter's apprentice, being, any sort of apprenticeship, but some, it's very sort of open for us to say, okay, they're working. What about they got a serious drug problem and they're in drug treatment? Well, that's certainly a barrier to employment, okay? And so if they're participating in something, or they can be at home and living at home and employed 80 hours a week. I also have a third child I haven't mentioned yet, my 22-year-old, who will hopefully be graduating in May with a very valuable arts degree. And so, you know, we've had the conversation about what kind of employment he's going to have after he graduates. And we've had the conversation about him coming home. And like a lot of normal families, you can come home, you can come to foster care if you're doing something. So we've had that conversation. You're not coming home and living off of us. You're coming home and going back and working at that restaurant where you used to work. Okay? You got to be doing something. We've had the conversation that his cell phone gets cut off upon graduation and goes to his younger sister. Okay? We've had the conversation your car insurance goes to you. You know, all these things we've had conversations. You know, you have to be doing something. And this is the something that the legislature defined. The legislature defined that the something is one of these 4 activities: high school, post-secondary, program to get employment, or employed. Those are the things. Now, there's another category, which is if you're a child with a disability, you can be in extended foster care, not doing one of those things. But it has to be a disability that prevents you from participating in one of those things. It can't just be, I've got a disability and I don't want to go to school. Okay? You got to be doing something. Okay? And all those things are statutory leave. That was my comment, that it's sort of a normal family. And because they're in extended foster care, there's going to be continued court reviews. But one of the things many people are surprised to see is that there's going to be continued permanency reviews. Okay? What's permanency in our system? What's permanency? What are some of the permanency options? Adoption. Back home reunification. Fit and willing relative. Permanent guardianship. Okay? Many of those go away when you turn 18. You can't have a guardianship. You can, technically, especially with some of our youth who have a disability. You can have a guardianship. But it's a higher burden to get a guardianship when you're over 18. But, you know, the permanency options sort of whittle down. Now, reunification is one. And what we're saying is if they go home, they don't qualify for extended foster care because they've reached permanency. Now, that's the one permanency option that allows them to come back if, you know, they decide to leave home. So reunification disqualifies them for extended foster care. But the big one is adoption. We should never stop trying to find a forever family for these kids. My wife was orphaned at age 9. I'm still looking for a really wealthy family to adopt her. So. You're never too old to have a forever family, and we should never stop looking for forever families for them. So adoption should still be on the table. We should still be looking for adoption. There is a new statutory permanency review, which is moving towards independence or something like that. I'm blanking on the actual statute. What is it? To somebody?
Transition from licensed care to independence.
Okay, thank you. Transition from licensed care to independence. Thank you. I knew one of the lawyers. One of my students would know. So we should continue to have permanency reviews. One of the other, go ahead.
Question. Does that mean that new cases or just children get coming to foster care at 18?
No, because in order to be in foster care over 18, you must have been living in licensed care on your 18th birthday. Okay, but you can come back after that. Okay. But in addition to these other qualifications of participating in one of these activities, you also have to agree to live in a supervised living arrangement. And this is where we're getting some of the pushback from some of the youth. Okay? Some of the youth are like, oh, I want to come back into foster care, but I don't want to follow anybody's rules. Part of qualifying for extended foster care is you have to agree. If you're not willing to live in a supervised living arrangement, then leave. Then go. When you're ready to live in a supervised living arrangement, you can come back. But the old system, we used to write checks for them and they lived wherever. This is one of the big transitions. We'd write checks and they would live with the girlfriend. They would, you know, I've been in some of these homes where some of our over 18-year-olds live. And I've represented some bad people as criminal defense work I've done in the past, and some of these are really scary places for me to go into. And this is where this former foster youth is living, okay? Where lots of criminal activities going on. So we have to approve. It has to be an independent. We have to approve their living arrangement. Okay? So they can come up with an option. I want to go live with my friend in their house with their father and mother and stuff. Great. We'll come and do a home study. It's not the same sort of home study. It just has to be approved. It doesn't have to be licensed. So it's a little bit less scrutiny, but still some scrutiny that we have to do in order to approve where they're going to live. So it has to be independent, but with supervision, case management, and supportive services. So what we've said is anybody who's willing to take some of our youth in over 18 has to agree to 5 things. They have to agree to provide them house, obviously. They have to agree to provide them food. They have to agree to provide them transportation, adult supervision, and independent living skills. Those skills keep going. They're in foster care. We have to continue to provide them those skills. So anyone who takes in any of our over 18-year-old youth have to agree to those 5 things. And then on top of that, we have the case management and supportive services. Some of those places may include their former foster placement. That's the first choice. Even when they come back, the first thing we're going to ask is, before you left, was there any place you liked living? Yeah, I liked living with Miss Smith. Okay. Then our intake unit will call Miss Smith and say, would you be willing to take them back? Okay. They're in foster care over 18, so there's a board rate that's being paid. There's a board rate even to their friend's father who's being paid. It differs. We've got different rates that we pay different folks and stuff, and it's less than some of the group homes would like. But there is a board rate that's paid for over 18-year-old youth. Another is another licensed foster home. That would be our next choice. We would prefer for our youth to be with licensed folks. But we have this new category. Grace Landing down here is one of the ones that predates this legislation that falls into this category, which is our transitional group homes. Some of you may be familiar with Fane House and with villages, Fane House in Orange County, Village in Seminole County. But we have more of those. We're developing more and more of those. Or another arrangement approved, like I said, could be any friend, relative, or mentor. They can live in a shared apartment, but it's going to take a lot to convince me to approve, and I'm the one approving it, to approve them living in an apartment by themselves. As we talked about what it is that they must provide, in addition, the over 18-year-olds will receive an allowance. So regardless of what we pay their caregiver, they're going to get an allowance as well. It's set at $200. Each of our over 18-year-old youth get $200 in allowance. It will be on a bank card that they're able to use. And we have to continually update the case plans. Transitional support services goes away. The end of next month, there will be no more transitional support services at all. And that's a big deal because over 70% of our local youth were on transitional support services. Aftercare remains, but we're going to talk about how that's going to change. What previously was Road to Independence is now just for post-secondary. What we previously thought of as Road to Independence is now the post-secondary education services and support. It is also set at $12.56. There used to be a program where we had to calculate how much we sent. It's now set at $12.56. Also, one of the other differences under the old system is they had to be enrolled in post-secondary education full-time. That's still technically the law, but it's defined full-time as 9 credit hours. So the law sets them versus the institution setting what is full-time. And many academic experts say that that's better for our kids because many of them can't really succeed if carrying too heavy a load. With those statutory criteria of everything that I've talked about, what we're hoping to build here is a whole different system focused on the success of the youth. And like I said, the big theme is transitions more like biological healthy families. We want to provide more support to foster parents because what we used to send into their home, they will now be doing in their home. So we're going to provide web training and lots of training for the foster parents on these independent living skills. We also have an enhanced board rate for the foster parents that's statutorily created. But it's not like to bribe more foster parents to take our older foster youth, although that may be a necessary thing because, as I often say, nobody wants a teenager in their house, not even if you birthed them. But But the 10% is because if you're doing this right, they should be participating in work. They should be participating in extracurricular activities. They should be participating in stuff, and that costs money. So the 10% board rate will pay for some of those expenses. Majority of our kids will be in extended foster care, not in the new PEST program, and so we have to develop other housing arrangements. As we talked about, there are more transitional group homes coming online, and we'll talk a little bit more. We're going to provide different types of support for over 18-year-olds. They will now have court involvement until they're 21. That we also are not going to change case managers. We eliminated what used to be independent living coordinators. They should keep their same case manager. Everything should stay the same. So they should keep their same case managers. We also are going to have specialized workers who are really going to provide more support to the foster parents and the case managers and not work directly with the youth, but sort of be backup experts within our system of care. Jobs, that's one that actually will work more closely with the youth themselves. But it's a contract with City of Life and Goodwill where they will be providing. My dream is every 16-year-old in our system of care will have a job. Amen. But at least get our youth up to the national statistics is only 30% of our older teens have jobs. So at least get us up to 30%. We're at 6% right now. Education, we have a specialist, Dr. Cookie Schultz, has been hired as a specialist to help both with high school. She was over 25 years as a high school teacher and administrator. She is also working on building our college coaches. And I told you there was zero money allocated to the foster care system. That legislative mandate that the school, all the universities have college coaches, that was zero budgeted too. But we luckily have great support. Seminole State already has a college coach model. UCF has one of the best ones in the state that's developed, and we're working on another contract with an awesome model out of California where we will be preparing a segment, 20 of our foster youth from the 3 counties every year, starting their freshman year in high school, getting them ready for college, and so we're building that in partnership with UCF. It's called the First Star Academy. So, but Dr. Schultz will be providing that. Housing, we have Minrad John, who's our housing specialist. He will be working to help us build our housing capacity and help folks find housing. We haven't yet hired anybody to work on our developmental and behavioral health issues. Obviously, a lot of these kids, part of the reason they've never been, part of the reason they're turning 18 in foster care, they may have serious behavioral issues that we want to work on. We also need assistance in crisis and reentry when they come back. How do we help them reenter into the system? So those are positions we still need to build into our system. We also envision having a PES or ETV specialist to help them connect to those college coaches, but also help with some of the financial things. I mentioned ETV. It's another funding stream. It's the educational training vouchers, which is not talked about in our state statute, but is a federal funding stream for some of our youth who don't qualify for PES. Because in order to qualify for PES, you have to be attending a Bright Futures college, but ETV allows you to apply to go to any college, not just a Bright Futures college. We also plan on building a higher level of assessments, not like the previous assessments. Aftercare is going to be completely redesigned. We are going to provide services. Youth comes in and says they're homeless. We will try to find them a place to sleep. They don't qualify for extended foster care. They don't qualify for PES. One of the classic aftercare was we had a youth who medication wasn't covered by Medicaid. Not in our aftercare, not in our PES program. So, 8:30 the other night, I was at the pharmacy buying her medicine. Okay, that's the type of thing that we want to be able to provide aftercare services for our youth. It's an emergency service. We're not giving them cash, but we'll help them out. They need counseling. They're in with their boyfriend, girlfriend, and stuff, and they're having battles. We don't, that may be a positive thing for them to be living together. Let's send someone into their house to give them couples counseling. Or it's not a real couple, it's just brother and sister living together, and they need someone in there. Again, they're not in extended foster care, they're not in PES, but they need some help. It's about services. Okay? And it's not to replace transitional support. And also, we view that aftercare as part of our post-reentry system. Judith's experienced some of this, which is that before they qualify for aftercare, before they qualify for extended foster care, they're not enrolled in school, they don't have a job. We want to give them a place to stay. We will have them stay in one of our houses, many times our transition houses, and we'll go through a reentry process where we'll talk about their permanency plan, we'll talk about their case plan, we'll talk about their transition plan. And I envision this sort of stage of aftercare as being sort of a life coach. What do you want to do? Can we help you get what you want to do? And if we can, well, let's build an extended foster care or a PEST plan around that. But let's have a real conversation about where you're going with your life. And that's sort of what I envision our reentry system being. We do have 18-year-olds who are already out there who are very upset because they're used to getting checks and they're not going to get it anymore. And so we're pushing a bunch of them to reenter foster care, which is what some of you all will see in the courtrooms. When we talk about this, we should talk about it being a legal status with an array of options, because they're used to being independent, okay? So they don't want to go back into foster care. Well, it's a legal status with an array of options, okay? Yes, we do have to approve where you're living, yes, but we'll be a little bit more flexible with some of the ones who are coming back. And there will be hard decisions made. There will be youth who are on the old Road to Independence program. There is a grandfather clause. Transitional support goes away at the end of March. But Road to Independence goes away when they fall out of that system. They can stay in Road, if they were in Road to Independence December 31st, they can stay in Road to Independence, even though they're still pursuing a GED. And now we might encourage them to switch over to extended foster care, but they can stay in Road to Independence. Some of the things that we've noticed we've needed in the first few months is there's a big issue with our older youth who have disabilities, and it seems to be only getting worse. We're having a battle between the Department of Children and Families and the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. Many of our youth qualify for lifetime of support from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, but there's 16,000 people on that waiting list. They don't like to tell you how many people there are on the waiting list. They won't publish it anymore. But so, you know, there's this big battle. Why do foster care kids get? Well, because they cost us $10,000 a month, between $5,000 and $10,000 a month, and we got zero money for it. So there's an ongoing battle about what to do with those youth. But more what you and the community can do, that has to be a statewide response, is that we need more apartments who are willing to, we will lease it. CBC will lease the apartments. We will be a corporate leaser, and we will place kids in that the apartment managers can approve. We need folks being willing to open up rooms and houses and stuff to be extended foster care options. We need more aftercare options as a placement for youth. And we need specialized. We got, unfortunately, way too many young women with babies that don't qualify for a lot of our placements and stuff. We've got the kids with disabilities, et cetera. We need mentors. Again, we need, you know, natural mentors, someone that they turn on, but we are going to need more volunteers. And obviously, it's zero budgeted. There's lots of sort of miscellaneous expenses that we are going to need funds for. And we need jobs. Through the City of Life contract and Goodwill, we talk about each one help one. If each company would be willing to help one of our youth with their first job, not just their forever job, we would make great progress. And some of these are going to be kids that you're going to fire. That's all right, okay? But take a chance on one of our youth who have very little life skills. We didn't talk about it. We didn't get back to the employment skills, but there's a whole bunch of employment skills that are called soft employment skills that are about how you just function in any workplace that a lot of our youth need. So I was told 45 minutes. I've gone an hour, so I don't know what that means. So. Questions? We got one in the back. No one.
When you were talking about the goals for the post-18, is APLA totally going away as a goal?
No, technically, so what she's talking about is one of the permanency options is another planned permanent living arrangement. One of the things I've always said about another planned permanent living arrangement is supposed to be permanent. So it can't just be remain in foster care. It has to be remain with this foster parent in this particular place. Those are the youth that would, when they turn 18, we would transfer the goal from APLA to transition from licensed care to independence. So that would be the logical transition, but unfortunately it's still there. Okay, question right here.
Money. Where are you getting the money? Is CBC doing fundraising?
Yeah,
'Cause I can just imagine there are donors in the community who are going to have a heart for these kids.
Yeah, so there is some money, and I said that there's zero new money, you know, for this. There was money for the Road to Independence program. That's been transferred. We're 2 months into the program. I was supposed to look at the budget last week, and I haven't looked at to see how much we're bleeding. Before this change in the system, CBC already spent $1.8 million in excess of our state allocation. CBC did, and that's common around the state. So it is a very serious problem, And so, yeah, that's the, you know, as I was in this meeting yesterday where we were talking about money of all the CBC systems and stuff, and everybody looked at me because I'm directing this program as the person who is siphoning off all the money. And that's the reality. Yes, we continue to need, and that's why I put it on the list, we continue to need funds. And we can negotiate about what that looks like. You know, I'm very excited about our college support program. You know, I think that will be a great source for many of our larger philanthropic interests. But even if the money was to support Grace Landing or some of our transition homes, I'd be excited because they need support as well. So it's our partners in the community, not just us, that needs funding to support these youth. So, other questions?
I got 2 young men who are coming out to start using these services. A lot of stuff is not in place. When is there going to be information or media blasts to let these kids know they do have these options and what's going on? Because they're in the dark, and I'm kind of in the dark too still.
I've been promised that our webpage will be up and running within the next 4 weeks. There is a page on CBC of Central Florida's web page under Services Independent Living that's there. We hope to make it much more interactive for the youth to walk them through all the steps and stuff. So it's not there right now. Hopefully the media blast won't be needed because we'll be having lots of one-on-one conversations. But there's also a statewide page called My Choices, My Future, My Choice. My Future, My Choice. If you search for My Future, My Choice, Florida, you will find the DCF webpage that has a whole bunch of very informative information. It's not about our program locally. But hopefully if they're aging out and are they Osceola youth? Then I would reach out specifically to Yola Pearson Shelf, who is our IL manager in Osceola, and they should be having meetings, okay, where they walk through. Okay. Other questions? Okay.
As far as a disability, is ADHD going to be a consideration for staying in to 22?
Probably not, because it has to be a disability that prevents them from participating in one of those activities. And ADHD would not prevent them from participating in one of those activities. Would it be something that would allow us to maybe work with them a little bit until they're able to participate in that? If it's something that's more severe, yes. But again, I don't see how that would prevent them from either participating in school, work, or a work jobs program. So that's the barrier. Okay. Judah.
Are they doing anything to tweak this law in the state legislature this year?
No, not that I'm aware of. There was some discussion initially about that. Some of the things, for instance, that PES doesn't cover the summer and stuff, we're going to fix that locally through a backdoor system. But so there's some things that need to be tweaked. But my understanding is because it took effect in January, the legislature was not interested in trying to tweak it because it's too early. So they wanted to wait for a full year of implementation before. There's a whole other piece to that, which is anytime a statute's passed, there has to be regulations promulgated by the department to implement any particular statutory change. That also hasn't come out. So we're sort of doing this blindly, which from the CBC perspective, we've been excited because, again, it gave us an opportunity to design what we want. And then we'll tweak it to meet whatever regulations come out, and hopefully we'll meet all the regulations. But we didn't want, it allowed us locally to say, what are our resources, what are our needs, and for us to build something locally, which gave us, I think, an exciting opportunity. Okay. Other questions?
For the aftercare, child that goes out, tries to live with a boyfriend, that doesn't work out, it's very likely that they're coming back because they haven't got their act together and don't meet one of the qualifying criteria to come back. What's the capacity to put those kids? Do we have a place for them? What's their capacity?
That's one of the big gaps, which is the aftercare. And you saw that list in the housing options, which is the aftercare housing options, because we don't have enough sort of what we refer to as emergency housing for some of these youth, who go out, think they're going to be able to handle it, and find out that they can't. And so that is one of our gaps. We are trying to fill it as best we can, but it becomes even more complicated. We have one of our youth who's coming out of jail who's a sex offender. You know, and so there's lots of restrictions on where this young person can live. And so, you know, we've scrambled and we found basically an adult criminal halfway house for them to live in as aftercare placement until we can get them a more established extended foster care plan.
So previously we were told, I think, that it's 30 days for the CBC to locate a placement for the child if they come back into care. Is that still holding true?
Statutorily, the issue is once they have been approved for extended foster care, we have 30 days to bring it before Judge Karsten. But we don't have a statutory limit on how long they can remain in that aftercare system. We are saying 30 to 45 days for them to be doing something. So we had one youth in Judah's placement who was there, well, off and on for 40 days or something, and he was doing nothing. And Judah, more than politely, in light of his response, said, "You're out of here." And that's the reality. And we hope he might come back when he's ready to live in a supervised living arrangement. But he was clearly not willing to live in a supervised living arrangement.
I was referencing, though, if the child may be homeless or looking for reentering foster care, how long should we
30 to
expect?
45 days. So if a youth comes back, no, as far as us, we will find them a place today, hopefully. The question is if they call and say, and if you go to our webpage, it has the intake number. They call the intake number. The intake folks and our IL managers will start looking for a bed that day. We have a deal with Covenant House. They can have a bed that night at Covenant House. Unfortunately, we don't like Covenant House because it's from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We would prefer for them to have a place to stay 24 hours at least, not, So we're scrambling, but sometimes we're stuck with just Covenant House depending on when they call. We will try to find them a placement today. We will hopefully go no longer than a few days with them having no place to go. I know it's not worked perfectly yet. That's our vision. We're still trying to build that capacity. We were talking today about possibly CBC getting that, because we're having such difficulty, CBC getting a house that we will staff because we're having such difficulty finding aftercare placements.
If they don't find something, is there someone we can contact?
Yeah, if the question was if you can't find someone, yeah, call me. So the question is, if you can't find a place for our aftercare homeless youth, feel free to call me. Right. I mean, many of our transitional housing, like Grace Landing, is taking emergency shelters. So some of the problem is the pushback we're having from some of the youth, or some of the youth may have already burnt those bridges. They've already been to Grace Landing. They've already been to Covenant House. They've already been to some of these other places when they've already burnt those bridges. They're saying we've changed and we're ready to really take things seriously, and so we have to find them alternatives. So,
how long is it supposed to be taking from the time they contact intake to being approved to come back into foster care and getting that taken care of?
That was the question I answered that I thought I was answering, but she was asking how long before we get them a bed when they're homeless, and hopefully that will be no longer than 24 hours. But to answer your question, which is how long do they have in this aftercare status until they've been approved or denied extended foster care, that should be 30 to 45 days. Within that 30 to 45 days, they should be participating in one of those qualifying activities, and we should have found them a supervised living arrangement for them to live in. If not, they're either going to get a denial or approval, hopefully, is what we're hoping for. But they may get a denial, but it's 30 to 45 days.
And then it's 30 days to get in front of Judge Karsten once they've been approved?
Correct.
Okay.
Once they've been approved for extended foster care, the statute says the department has to file I'm not sure it's called a petition, but a document to place it. And that shouldn't require a hearing because the guardian ad litem, everybody should be on board. The youth is asked to come back in. Parents, that's sort of one of the interesting questions of parents party, not party. But anyway, but that doesn't require a hearing. So. We should getting the paperwork before the judge for the judge to sign off saying, and then setting a review hearing. That should be the next hearing, should be a review hearing. There's no requirement of a hearing for a child to enter foster care. There's a requirement for a child over 18 to leave foster care. There's a requirement that you do have to have a review hearing. So what we envision is the paperwork gets before the judge approves the child coming back into foster care, and sets a review hearing. Whether, I don't know what the practice will be down here, 3 months, 6 months, statutorily it has to be at least every 6 months.
As a recruiter in trying to find these homes, what kind of training will they need? Like we do the Pride training, will they need, is there?
Yeah, and we hope to have, and I had that conversation at my meeting at 8 o'clock this morning, which is that we've planned on having some training, especially training for some of these folks with dealing with trauma, youth who've experienced trauma. At a minimum, that's what we want them to have, and then some understanding of the system of care and who's going to be coming into their house and stuff. We just haven't developed it. We envisioned it happening every couple months. And someone might be approved and yet not have the training because the training is not required beforehand, but that they have to be expected to participate in the training because we don't want to delay because it might be a specific person chosen by the youth or it might be someone recruited. We just haven't developed it, and so keep reminding me that we need to get going on that. Okay?
What is the intake number, phone number?
Who knows the intake number? Okay, we'll get it. If somebody can go to CBC's webpage, it's right there on the independent living. Yep.
When you talked about permanency options, are the conditions for reunification as an option going to change at all? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. In reality, yes. So in order for there to be a reunification before a child turns 18, the judge has to approve it. And then there's 6 months of supervision. When a child turns 18 and they say, I'm going back to live with mom, judge hasn't approved it. Everybody may say it's a really bad idea. But the young adult can choose to do that. What I'm saying is when they've reunified, they no longer qualify for extended foster care. If they've gone home, we're not paying parents who we removed the kids from to supervise that placement and stuff. Now, would we possibly provide, if we thought that that was a good idea, would we possibly provide some wraparound support to make that a possibility? Yes, but I would suggest we start that at 17 and a half if we really thought that was a good idea before they turned 18. So.
The intake phone number is 407-304-8444.
Regarding staying in until 22, what constitutes being able to stay in?
There is no statutory definition about which disabilities qualify for someone to stay in. We've been encouraged to be very flexible about that. But again, it has to be a disability that prevents them from participating. Well, no, I'm sorry. If they were participating in one of those activities and they had a disability, we'd even be more flexible. So we've been told to be flexible about the definition. So again, going back to your ADHD, yes, I would probably approve an ADHD diagnosis. It does have to be one that has been officially diagnosed, so we're going to need some evidence from a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or medical physician about the disability, so there does have to be some documentation of the disability. But if we had someone who is participating in one of those activities and has a disability and wishes to stay in foster care to 22, we'd approve that.
I have two questions. So you said if they were reunified with their parents, they wouldn't be allowed to stay in extended foster care. What if they left their parents' house because it didn't work out? Can they come back into foster care?
Absolutely. So that's what I alluded to, was that's the one permanency option that would allow them to come back because they went to their parents thinking that this was a great option. That disqualified them because they had reached permanency, but then they would still be able to come back. Whereas if they're adopted, the other real permanency option, they would have reached permanency and probably would not come back into extended foster care. But we hope if we've approved an adoptive placement, well, over 18, we don't have to approve. They can be adopted by anybody. A judge would have approved that adoptive placement.
I had one more quick question.
Okay.
If they're in foster care at 18 and they have said prior to their 18th birthday that they want to stay in foster care, do they have to do like the whole application process and stuff?
So
or
again,
are they just
18
automatically they are still in foster care?
18 should be seamless. So there's no, it should be at the last JR or the JR before the last JR, whenever, at some judicial review, judge signs off as one of the notes in the judicial review order that the child has chosen to remain in foster care. That's all we need. Child remains. Everything stays the same. 18's a nice dinner. Next morning, everything stays the same. No application, no nothing. The application is just for those who are returning to foster care.
Is there a specific time frame for an 18-year-old who decides to go to parent to decide to come back into foster care?
21. You
21.
can return to foster care until you're 21 as long as you were 18 at the time of your licensed care. Okay, we're about to lose my recording time. One last question. If they were in runaway, if it said licensed care, but licensed care includes runaway, Department of Corrections, Department of Juvenile Justice, they still qualify as in licensed care, even though they're physically not in a licensed placement. So, thank you all very much. I think there's a couple announcements about a survey and some other things.
Yep, I told you I wouldn't leave, didn't I? I'm back. So you have surveys that you've completed. If you'll make sure that you leave them at the desk as you depart outside the elevator area. And also, if you have not signed in, please make certain that you do that. Thank you on behalf of all of Osceola for attending. This is a good, strong turnout, and I would expect nothing less from you guys. So, hope it was useful. Make sure you give us feedback on what other topics you want to learn more about, and we'll make sure that happens for you. Have a great day.
Just again,
well, you. Jerry, oh, I forgot to thank my colleague, Jerry. Oh, I thank him all the time. I know. It's like a good work wife. Thank you.